Politico writes, let me zoom in on this for you. The far right is so obsessed with making babies, they just held a whole conference about it behind the scenes at the first NatalCon. They write for Politico, the far right's campaign to explode the population. I would like to say two things. One, this conference happened, what was it, like 6 months ago?
In December.
So
they just held this conference. Like, where have you guys been?
And they say, explode the population. The population is collapsing. Birth rates are below replacement. Telling people to have babies is trying to moderate, at the very least, the population. But it is now, I must say, far right to want to have children. There are three things that life does. They eat, they sleep, and they make more of themselves. And the fascinating thing is, right now, the left's idea is you should be eating way more. You should be sleeping whenever you feel like it, but don't you dare make more of yourselves. My attitude is, if you're somebody who eats a lot and sleeps a lot, I agree. Don't make more of yourselves. Next question.
Well, how long until we end up, or at least me, I end up on an extremist list because I want to have a family one day. Ooh. They're like, crazy. So, you want to have children? I admit it. So cuff me now. Like, it doesn't make any sense except for the fact that they just want to see everything destroyed, right? Like, even figures, So I actually know a couple of people who attended this conference, and they talked about the fact that it was a really interesting mix of, some people who are, religious Catholic who wanted to have, big families, but also people who are just like Silicon Valley tech types who are saying, if we let our population collapse, this is very, very, very bad. You don't have to look any farther than Japan, right? Japan knows that they ultimately are going to be so short in workers. It's dangerous. They don't have people to care for their elderly. I don't understand why wanting your country to survive has to be a far right idea, except unless you hate the country.
You ready for this? My conspiracy theory? The AI already took over, and it's not Terminators that are marching through the streets going to physical war with humans. It's the AI thinking, we got to get rid of these biological people and just be full AI. But how do you do it? Well, the AI watched Terminator. And they're like, the humans will resist unless we tell them they're far right. Then they'll just stop making more of themselves.
No, resist, counterculture. Isn't it weird that counterculture is like, I want to be a mom one day?
I mean, one of the things that the left is like it's against traditionalism. And so I guess the ultimate traditionalism is having a family at all.
Which is how you preserve traditions.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's how you preserve. Traditionally, people make more of themselves.
And they pass down their cultures and customs.
The ultimate untraditional thing is that they just go ahead and don't make more. They just stop making people. That's the ultimate ending of tradition, is the ending of the human race. And there are people that are, anti-natal or against making more humans. They believe that people are bad and that just the existence of humans is a bad thing on Earth and stuff. But that's completely insane, right? Like, if there is going to be good and bad at all, the good things must be the things that are good for human beings, because we are what is deciding what is and is not good. So if we're going to decide, if we're what's the only thing capable of making a decision as to what is and is not good, what is good for humans must be one of the things that we consider good.
Unless the AI has already taken over.
That sounds terrifying.
I mean, even still.
I think that, though, like, why lefty journalists are writing pieces like this is, like you were saying, they hate tradition and they hate the nuclear family, right? They want to do whatever they can to break that up because it is the one institution that is kind of like a barrier from the total state and from total government control. If you have strong family units, you have strong communities, and then you have a strong people that, won't necessarily bend to the will of government easily. So I think that's ultimately why they're making this push and this ploy, and that's why you see them telling, young women to delay having kids. They're telling girls on college campuses now to freeze their eggs and advertising that at student fairs. It's crazy. They don't want anyone to procreate. They don't want nuclear families. That's what it's about.
Right, because nuclear families and strong communities look to each other for support. They don't look to the government.
Yeah,
That's the punk rock resistance. Move to the country, start a garden, raise some chickens, have some babies, talk to your neighbors.
That sounds crazy. It might work,
That literally sounds like white nationalism and right-wing extremism.
There's like some dude in a rocking chair on his porch with like wheat hanging from his mouth, rocking back and forth, and that's white nationalism. And he's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just have chickens. Like, oh, that proves it. And that's everything's far right. Working out is far right. Eating healthy is far right. Having babies is far right. They want you sick, fat, living in a pod, and eating bugs.
Right. Things that keep you alive and give your life purpose are quote unquote far right. That's sad, right? What is the left selling to its youth if they're saying like all of these things
Nihilism.
that keep right, and nihilism that is meant to destroy you early. I can't imagine being a young person and looking at these two things and saying, wow, I think I'll go with the one that actually wants me to suffer and be miserable. Like what's going on in your mind that this is the better option?
Depression.
No, I think so. And isolation. I think people are incredibly socially isolated. I think, obviously the internet has a lot of benefits. Shout out to this show and all the supporters who found us that way. But the internet and social media give this illusion that you're in contact with people when you are not. I think it's a very different thing to know your neighbors and talk to them versus to see someone's post and like them, you know?
Definitely. And I think too, the leftist angle behind this isn't just nuclear family. It's also, I think they're not overly concerned with our American birth rate being below replacement level, or a lot of European countries running into the same issue because they're pro mass migration, right? So they're in their head, the numbers are going to work out just fine. But for Americans and for people in Europe who maybe have been there for generations, it is a difficult reality that they're realizing, oh, we aren't at replacement level. We're going to need to have more kids. How are we going to do that? And I think, you're seeing this movement on the right of conservatives being willing to use government to reach that end. Hungary has done this through, different laws that they've passed. And I think
like tax incentives.
Exactly. And I think there are a lot of people on the right now. Trump in particular has talked about, a baby boom when he wins in 2024. So I think that there are people on the right who are going to be willing to use government to incentivize people to have more kids, because we're going to have a real problem.
One of my favorite tweets from Elon Musk of all time, this was about a year ago. The story broke that he had children. He has, I think 11, maybe secretly more. But he had a set of twins with an executive at one of his companies. And when this was coming out, obviously people are always going after him for something. And he just tweeted something to the effect, I'll have to retweet it if I can find it. Like, I love having a big family. I hope you all do too one day. Like, this is just like a family is good mentality. And I think, he is not someone I would point to and be like, has a very traditional family structure. Like, he obviously doesn't. Yeah. But the idea
Doesn't he have like 12 kids?
He has, I can think of at least 11. I suspect he secretly has more. There was this rumor that he's like Amber Heard's baby daddy. Like, he keeps, like, every time Grimes does an interview, she's suddenly like, and there's another one. Like, it's impossible to keep track, probably by design. But I think we live in a culture that has taught us to view children as a burden and as the end of life, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you are young, the worst thing you could do is have a baby, because now you can't work or travel or I don't even know what. When actually it is the insurance that your life is meaningful and lives on, right? Like, there are obviously terrible, neglectful parents, but for the most part, the point of having children is to ensure the people who went before you are basically getting a payment for the investment they made in you. All of these generations that took you today to be like, well, I don't want to have them because I like decorating my house in a certain way and I want it to be quiet, which is literally something I saw on Instagram today. This girl being like, well, I have a very specific design aesthetic, so I couldn't have children. You want to be like, girl, are you okay? Like, this is everything your ancestors have worked for you to be just selfish? It's crazy.
The crazy thing, if you do not have a kid, you will be the first life form in billions of years of evolutionary history that is not reproduced. Every single living organism that came before you successfully reproduced. And if you don't, it all ends with you. Mm-hmm. That's scary.
And that's the thing about, I'm glad that you mentioned mass migration, especially when you look, I can't remember who I pulled the data from recently, but there was a study, maybe Pew Research, maybe a different one, that specifically was like, well, the birth rate's down, but, migration is up, so that's okay. But that's like saying all people are interchangeable. And especially if you look at Europe, where there are countries that are very geographically close together, but ultimately are very different in terms of their cultures, traditions, histories, to say, well, we'll just bring in other people is like saying the things that everyone around you has worked to build, that you find beautiful, that you find meaningful, they're worthless to us. We don't care about them. The only people who care about them are people who are saying, like, it is worth having children, it is worth carrying on these things that make our area special and unique. And I think to say otherwise is to say that, like, ultimately you're just a number to the government, which you are.
That's all you are.
It's just GDP. That's all they care about.
Yeah, so I think that you've got a point about just GDP, that is the metric that the people that are kind of bean counters look at, and there is validity to it, because you can associate a certain number of deaths per year that happen every time your GDP number goes down by 1%. I don't know what it is, but it is a certain number is associated, because rich societies, wealthy societies have people that live longer. You have more options, so that is a true thing. But I think that it is likely that maybe the U.S. kind of focuses on that too much, where there is an impulse to think that high GDP is equal to high satisfaction in life, and that's not the case.
It's not true.
Yeah.
I think for a long time we've had politicians on both sides that have put GDP before people. And I think when you do that, you're not servicing your fellow countrymen, right? And you're creating communities that aren't cohesive. So like you were saying, it's about legacy. It's about passing something down. And I think a lot of women, sadly, have been just spoon-fed feminist propaganda, and they're going to wake up when it's too late, right? And they're going to realize they were sold a false bill of goods and they've missed that fertility window, and they're going to live alone, as you were saying, with, I guess, their interior decoration, but it won't be enough. It won't be fulfilling, because everyone does want to leave a piece of them and a legacy behind.
And I think there are people, for whatever circumstances in life, who don't have children for something, but hopefully you are still part of the family unit, right? You still have siblings, you still have parents, you have nieces and nephews. Like, you can care for children in a community setting, but the community needs to be producing children. That's the key thing. Otherwise, it falls apart, and that's true of the country. You need children for the country to continue.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.